Thank you for joining us for our weekly Cannabis Connection webinar series. I am your host, Jamie Cooper. I am the founder of Cannabis Connection, and today I am joined by our founding member, Karina Miller of LC Solutions. And today we are going to talk about CFO perspective, budgeting, and forecasting. How are you doing today, Karina?
I'm good, Jamie. Thank you. How are you?
Pretty good. Things are moving along here in Michigan. Things have changed since we last spoke to you. They have issued their first licensing here in Michigan, and legalization's on the ballot in November. So we have a lot going on, and today is the election primary.
Right, exactly. Yeah, everything happened so fast. It's been, 2 months, and all these changes in the meantime. So it'll be interesting going forward.
Right. Yes, it will. Well, so tell us a little bit about yourself and LC Solutions.
So my background in this industry has been a long time coming. I've been a CPA since 2011, but have been involved in this industry on a personal level since around the same time. I started this firm late 2016, right when the commercial laws went into effect. Really because I have a skill and a passion for accounting, and I knew this industry needed help. So that's where the basis of that came from. And now we are growing quickly and have a network of CPAs across the state, actually. So we're able to support people locally, in areas that might otherwise have good CPA services available.
Yay, that's awesome. Well, congratulations on your growth, and I've been able to see it, and thank you for all the content that you're putting out, teaching people how, what goes into all of their taxes and accounting and things like that for the cannabis industry here.
Yeah, important stuff. Thank you.
Right. And, budgeting and forecasting, or like forecasting especially, is something that I hear people needing help with a lot, because this is new to Michigan. And sometimes it's just like, how do we crunch these numbers? How do we know what we're going to get off of the market? Right. So you can go ahead and pull up I can see your screen, and there we go.
All right. How's that?
There it is.
All right, so like Jamie said, we're going to talk about budgeting and forecasting.
Actually, so at the top left corner where it says use slideshow, that'll probably make it a full screen. There you go. Perfect.
Okay, there we go. So we're going to talk about budgeting and forecasting. When I went to write this presentation, I didn't know where to start because there's so many different stages of it. So I'm going to focus more on the beginning stages and the startup phase of the business cycle. Here's a little bit more about LC Solutions, our mission statement and what we stand for, and I kind of elaborated more on our background and my personal experience in the industry at the beginning of the conversation. So let's get into forecasting and budgeting. So an important part in the planning process for your business is to create financial budgets and forecasts. And, budgets are really used more from a cost control perspective, where they're an estimate of expected income and expenditures. And you would use those numbers as a guideline for your activities. So if, you're going over or under in your expenses, and then how to plan for that. You may also want that information in the beginning, especially if you're looking at seeking investors or, speaking to others about your business. Having a budget and forecast in place from the beginning, that's important, especially to show that, you've thought the process through for your business, and then obviously what the numerical expectations of it are going to be. So how do you prepare a budget? It's good to set out with good intentions of how you're going to do it, but then when you really get down to it, there's a lot of detail that is involved. So the best way is to start with what you know. People who are getting into this industry, a lot of them already have experience in the industry in different ways. So you can pull information and, cost data from things that you already know. If not, then you should consult with an expert, someone who is already experienced in this industry and, has the has the cost data and the processes in place that they've gone through, and they can help guide you on what may be realistic budget expectations. So when you're looking at, what data to use, think about the entire process. What activities are going to be involved in your business? What is needed to perform these activities? It's one thing to have a very high level perspective of something, but you really need to think about the details. What equipment and software are build outs going to be required for your business. Think about internal management functions outside of the actual operating activities. So for office management items. And again, detail is very important. You want to have accurate costs, and just plugging bulk amounts here and there, it really is not going to be effective for you. So when we work with clients in their beginning stages, a lot of times we see budgets that are incomplete. You have people who are very experienced maybe in the industry from an operating perspective, and they know what costs are going to be there, but they're not thinking about some of the bigger picture costs that it takes to run a business. So, some of these might be technology costs, administrative costs, HIPAA compliance. We've seen the recent advisory bulletins released from Lara about, OSHA requirements and all that. So all those things, they do inherently have some cost into them. One of the things that you can do, and this is something that, as a former financial statement, I had a lot of experience going into different types of businesses and business models. Most businesses, if you reach out to them, or something that's a similar industry, it doesn't have to be cannabis specific, but maybe manufacturing or retail, go into the business and look around and see what's happening. Look at the staff that are involved, the things that they have in their business, how it looks, and then think about the costs that might go into that. So then how to prepare a budget. So again, you want to use real numbers when possible. You can get quotes for, equipment costs. You may already know or have a realistic expectation of supply costs for growing or processing. For provisioning centers, there's a lot of data already out there that, is available that you can look to for creating a budget. And then always expect the unexpected. So, this industry is full of unexpected costs, and, really any industry is in any startup business, but this industry in particular. So you really want to plan and have cushions within your budget in case costs are more than what you originally expected. So then how to prepare a budget. We talked about the costs. You also are going to have tax ramifications. So it's, you want to be careful about, how you're putting those costs together, and then, make sure you're able to come up with an accurate tax prediction off of that. It's, one of the last light items that you think of, and really, especially for a cannabis business, taxes could be one of your largest costs. And when you do this, you need to make sure that your costs are allocated correctly. We've talked about 280E before in a former webinar, and, just really work with a professional, work with an expert who understands the tax ramifications and the different cost allocations, so that they can help you with a realistic budget for your tax expense.
And Karina, can you give our audience a little bit of an overview about 280E really quick?
Sure. So 280E, what it does is it limits cannabis businesses who are plant touching. It limits the expense deductions they're allowed to take to just cost of goods sold only. So depending on which business model you have, you have different costs that would go into cost of goods sold. People often hear horror stories about cannabis businesses having these abnormally high tax rates, and really what it is there's expense deductions you can't take, whereas if any other type of business model, they're able to take those deductions, and it's because cannabis is federally illegal.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Sure. So then what to do with the budget once you have one? you know, people put together budgets, and like I said in the beginning, they're done with very good intentions, but after you put it together and you actually start operating or incurring costs, you have to make sure to update your budget and keep referring back to it so you can see when changes have been made. Especially when businesses are starting out, business owners get excited, they're creating their business, building thing, and costs start to add up quickly. And it's important to always, have a hard line and refer back to that budget so you can recognize that fairly quickly. And then to determine a plan for what you're going to do if costs do go over budget. So are you going to cut costs from other areas, or are you going to invest more in the company yourselves, look for other investors? Again, costs come up unexpectedly in any new business that you're starting, but especially in this industry, there's a lot of, things that people didn't plan for, especially as they move through licensing and, realize all of the compliance efforts they have to do, and, everything that they need to get their locations ready. Costs really do start to add up quickly. So just be mindful of that as you move along, and, again, stick to your original budget and make changes as it happens, but have those hard lines that you can refer back to.
Well, yeah, and I think these businesses, these licensed businesses, will see this a lot because of compliance changes. And sometimes these compliancy changes could cost you, another $20,000. And so it's really important to keep that in mind and know exactly where in the budget you can pull from to help facilitate that.
Right, exactly. It's something that some of our clients are running into is, you have an expectation that a municipality is going to opt in, and, maybe they're delayed, or they initially don't opt in, but give them an opportunity to come back with more information. And that's something that you probably wouldn't plan for up front, but that's additional cost and time that it's going to take before you can actually get started and, producing revenue.
Right.
So that was budgets. And again, budgets are more for cost control. So financial forecasts, that's taking baseline numbers, and you can call them budget numbers, but using those to predict future revenues and expenses over a period of time. So you can really see how your business is going to grow, the assets that you're going to accumulate, any debt or equity that you're going to accumulate along the way. For this industry, a forecast for 5 to 7 years out is generally, that gives the best idea. If you look at states like Oregon or Colorado, and how their markets changed over the first few years and then kind of plateaued and matured after, the 5-year mark, and as we're getting further down the line. So though, who knows what's going to happen in the future, but, these are just things to be aware of and plan for. So, if changes happen and, let's say oversaturation occurs, how are you going to react to that and plan for that so that your business still remains stable? Or, under a recreational model, if business booms, how are you going to be able to handle that and keep up with the demand?
And it's about to happen. The election just 3 short months away, and, and then 12 months after that, there's a lot going on right now, and we got to be keeping that in mind.
Right. Always good to plan ahead.
Right, and then the recreational licensing is a separate licensing process from medical. So, here in a year and a half, you're going to be doing it all over again.
Right. Yeah, best to start planning now if we look at, based on past expectations of, going through the medical licensing process.
Right.
So for financial forecasts, just like for budgets, accuracy counts. You want to make sure that you're using realistic numbers. Again, look for quotes. Look at how other markets have performed. Look at how the current market's performing. You can visit different cities in Michigan that already have operating provisioning centers. Let's take for example, and let's say you're planning to open a provisioning center in Grand Rapids, where there's not really there's a lack over on the west side of the state. So, look at other markets like Flint or like Detroit or Ann Arbor and compare that to what your expected market is in a new municipality. And, you can base your numbers on that and what the patient or the customer expectations might be in that area. And always work with a professional. So, again, there's a lot of resources out there, but, when you're preparing forecasts and budgets, you want to make sure that everything is done correctly. A CPA or an accounting expert can help you prepare a formal financial statement packet. So, when we do something like that, for example, we're very detailed in our cost of goods allocations. We create beginning asset depreciation and lease schedules, and really use hard data as if the business were actually started already in real life tools that you can use and build that into the forecasts. And then too, have an expert look at it. They can sometimes point out costs that maybe you haven't thought of, that, they have other experiences in business that they can, bring that to the table and make you aware of them. So some useful tools, always Excel. We had early on, Sheets, the Google version. That's really something that has become a valuable tool for us and a lot of clients, and it really because it's the multiple users who can edit it at once. So, if you have a forecast or a budget that's always changing as you're in your planning phase, maybe as you get different equipment quotes or talk to different investors or, plan different business models, you want to make sure that you have a format that can easily be updated and changed as you go along. There are some templates out there that are available that you can purchase online. We've seen quite a few. Just be aware that these templates, they're primarily based off of non-cannabis industries. So they're, even if they have the wording in there that, is specific to the industry, one that we see fairly often has where you can, calculate down to grow room costs and processing costs and all these things. And that's a lot of great detail, but make sure that the formulas behind those numbers and the cost allocation assumptions that are being applied to them are correct. If you do use a template, we do recommend that you still seek a professional, even just have a quick look over of it, because, like I said, there are a lot of errors in there, primarily because it wasn't originally designed first for the cannabis industry. So just be aware of that. And then, of course, an expert can help you create a budget template that is specific to your needs, or a full financial forecast. We have a lot of clients in their early stages where maybe they're not quite ready for a full financial forecast or a full budget yet, but they're curious and they want to do as much as they can themselves, but still have an expert look at it, every so often to make sure they're doing things correctly. So we can help guide you on what expenses may be deductible or how to set it up, or even create those beginning input templates for you.
Well, it certainly doesn't hurt to have another set of eyes to be looking at a very important part of your business.
Right, exactly. And it's so surprising. You see these very, very good looking templates, and then, we look at them and say, oh, the tax expense was calculated wrong. Really, it should be this. And it's, it's much higher than what that forecast originally showed. And it, things like that can really change things.
Right, and then your investor will want to see true numbers and probably double check on their end to make sure that they're accurate.
Right. Yeah, and that's that's something to note too. Is if you present a forecast to an investor, that investor is going to want to know that business is still staying in line down the road as operations start and move forward. So you're going to continuously have complete financial information based on historical or current results, but you're going, based off of that, you're going to be continuously updating your financial forecast for going forward, so that you can have a line of how the company is being ran and what's happening from that.
Right.
It's amazing what what an experienced person can read by just looking at the face of a financial statement, that you can really determine the health of a business from looking at those.
Absolutely.
So some other cost control activities, budgets and forecasts, those are really the beginning stages, but then you can also use them going forward. Some ideas are, you can look at what costs are changing and how does that affect your bottom line. So if your packaging costs increase, for example, or electrical costs decreased because of wind energy, or different variables that can go into and affect costs in your net income. You can look at was there a spike in costs from one month to another, and what are the reasons why? One popular thing to look at in the manufacturing world is product waste, or inventory that's not being used, or reasons why. You can either look at a spike or a difference and say, oh, we had a large amount of waste this month, or hey, we don't know what's going on, and maybe you dig into it further and find reasons that you weren't aware of. We talk about financial fraud. That's one thing that you can look at, is if you have something very consistent over a period of time, and then all of a sudden it changes, and it's not a reason related to operations themselves, then sometimes it can mean that other things are going on that shouldn't be going on. You can look at what sales trends are. So if if we take the stage that we're at right now compared to where we were 6 months ago, a lot of things have changed for currently operating businesses, for visioning centers. You can look at too, as you move through this process, how things continue to change. So one example of that is as you go through and implement where you're charging sales tax, or when you're, going through installing your point of sale system and doing all these things to become compliant, it may affect your sales at first. It's something that patients aren't used to, so it may change things. And it's a good to have that data available so you can monitor it as it happens, and then see if it was, was it just an initial shock, or is it something that continues down the line. And then two, what if forecasts. So what if you sell one product versus another? What do your sales like? What if tax laws change? So if cannabis is descheduled and doesn't have to follow 280E anymore, that's really going to affect your bottom line. And things like what if you expand your business by advertising and increasing marketing expenses, versus if you were to go the acquisition and development route. All those things affect your taxes, especially with 280E in place. So if you're doing these types of what if forecasts, you can show different routes and compare them to each other, and see what makes the most sense for your business.
And, if there's going to be a federal change happening at some point, 280E goes away, you're going to be a busy gal.
Right. We'll have a lot of amendments to file too from the older returns.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. Woo.
Can't imagine.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
Right. Just a matter of time. But yeah, that'll we'll definitely be prepared when that day does come.
Right.
So just, some other cost control items to think about. So, what's your plan of action if your business activities go over under budget? We kind of talked about that a little bit earlier, but, again, just make sure that, if things don't fall in line with what you originally predicted, that you have a plan of action for what to do in that case. And again, changes happen. So as you move along, costs will not line up to what your original expectations are. And that's just something that, you should be aware of up front and prepare for. Look at cost control, look at, timeliness to your reaction in any budgetary changes. So, it's one thing to have the budget in place, but make sure you use it as you go along. So, when we talk about managing budgets and forecasts and, doing cost analysis and all these things, really that's a controllership or a CFO function. And, what this role is to provide this more detailed but higher level financial control for in information gathering and creating reports and making that information useful to your decision making. Again, I'll take a business owner who's excited and building their business and spending these costs and doing all these things. Well, sometimes they forget about the finances behind that and how it's really affecting their accounting. So, having someone to point those things out and to kind of keep an eye on your overall accounting and financial activity is really helpful, especially as your business starts to grow. And for startups, you hear, stories and, it's make it or break it in the first few years. It's really, those years are the hardest to get through. And, it really revolves around, having appropriate control over the business and especially over the financial information of the business. And again, planning ahead. So if you start to recognize a problem or, somebody with that accounting eye for your business starts to recognize a problem, you can identify it and then determine how you're going to move forward as the business continues. If it's a problem, something needs to change. So it's important to be able to have that financial information and somebody who can, take that information and make it useful for your business. And that's it. That's all I have. This last slide is just some ways that we can help you, some of the services that we offer. So we do offer CFO services, and what that is from our perspective. Some businesses are large enough or planning to be large enough where they may be better off with a dedicated CFO on site. But for most of the businesses out there, they're not going to be to that point, at least for the first few years and maybe even ongoing, depending on, what business model they have. So we do offer virtual CFO services. And what that is we have CPAs on our staff that, like I had said in the beginning, are located in different areas of Michigan and have different experiences in manufacturing or retail or financial planning from a CFO or a controller perspective. So they're eager to work in this industry and apply that knowledge, and that's where those services come in. They are dedicated to your business. So if you do need them on site, they're there, for review meetings or forecasting presentations or whatever that may be. But they're really meant to provide that controllership experience for a small to medium-sized business model. Then, of course, the monthly bookkeeping, 280E cost consulting, accounting system setup, internal control planning, tax preparations, and then QuickBooks services.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karina. I do have a couple of questions for you. So you had just mentioned about the CFO services. So, and you getting to that point where you might need one on site. At what point is that?
I think that point is, the way I look at our CFO services is they're a step up from the monthly bookkeeping, where we're not just plugging in the data and creating statements. We're actually taking that financial data and doing something more with it. So when you get to the point where you're seeking that yourself, maybe you're the CEO or owner of your business, and you have a lot of costs that are going on, and that your business is progressing forward, but maybe you don't quite know how or want to apply other types of analysis to that. At that point, the CFO services would come in handy. Also, in the beginning stages, budgeting and forecasting, that really is a CFO function. But in the early stages, maybe that's just something that we could help you with initially. And then as your business grows, our service offerings to you would develop over time as your needs develop over time. I think, there's going to be a point in your business that it becomes clear that you need those higher level services, whether somebody else points it out to you, or you start to recognize yourself, that point will make itself clear.
Now, do you feel that the licensing board is looking for someone to be listed in the application as a CFO, or, I mean, there's a lot of money that has to be managed correctly. And so do you feel like that maybe the board is looking for that in applications?
I think so. We have the annual review requirement that is there for licensees. What the review requirement is for a third party CPA, someone who is unfamiliar, independent of your business, to come in and, in effect, do a mini audit on your records. So given that requirement is there, then I do feel that licensing does want the business to be proactive in thinking about how they're going to make sure they're able to comply with those reviews and audits. And that involves having that financial management, that financial control.
Okay. And then do you help with investor relations, meaning when you start having those serious conversation with investors and trying to figure out, how you are going to be paying the investor back or giving a portion of your company, can you help with that?
We can help with that. What we do is prepare financial forecasts. So the business owner would have its raw data, its expectations, and then we would prepare a packet that they can present to investors that explains that in formal financial statement presentation. So something that they're used to looking at. And then we also help on the back end after of explaining the amounts and how they're calculated from an accounting perspective to that investor. It would still be the business owner's responsibility in that case, though, to present or to come up with the data that is supposed to go into those forecasts. So we don't, when investors are involved, we don't say, oh, so much will cost this. We take that information from the business owner and make that useful for the investors, the presentation to the investor.
Okay. And then one question I wanted to ask, because personally, I just want to know, because I've been having these discussions with a lot of other cannabis business owners. I've been doing marketing for about 10 years now, and I've worked in other industries, and I've seen marketing budgets in other industries and what that looks like. And what I'm seeing in the cannabis industry is not the same. So are you able to kind of provide how much money, how much should be dedicated to marketing a cannabis business?
I think that depends on what your marketing strategies are. So if if you look at trade shows, for example, you should expect to spend a few thousand per trade show when you look at the registration fees and the handouts and giveaways and planning for that show.
Right.
Then there's things like if we take Facebook marketing, I feel like I spend way too much in Facebook marketing, and it doesn't really get me anywhere. But that may be specific to the industry where it's more limited in the shares and how that marketing is being done on social media. Something that we do a lot of print advertising. So it's and those costs are much different than if you're looking at trade shows and some other things. So in terms of an annual number, I can tell you that my expectations in spending for advertising have been probably at least double or triple than what I originally planned. And this industry is competitive, but it's also limited in how information gets out there. So sometimes you need to spend more just to have the same effect as some other type of industry may have in marketing.
Right. I couldn't agree more. Well, Karina Miller with LC Solutions Michigan, thank you so much, as always, for your time today.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure doing it, Jamie. Thank you.
No problem. And I'm going to share my screen really quick. And let's see here. Okay. So as always, I have to give a big thanks and shout out to my founding members. We have You, Karina, with LC Solutions Michigan, THC 123, Bricks and Mortar Cannabis Insurance, Canna Media Works, Cola Marketing, National Cannabis Security Services, Vista Green Consulting Group, Ingrid Marketing, and ICS Consulting. Always a huge shout out to these people because they are the foundation of Cannabis Connection and are some of the industry leaders here and the experts in helping these businesses get up and running in Michigan. If you haven't done so already, make sure that you join for your free account on Cannabis Connection. It gives you access to the online community, gets you on our email list, and you'll stay up to date with our networking events, all of our weekly webinars coming up. You can see that schedule for all of our upcoming webinars on the Cannabis Connection page, cannabisconnection.com, and you look under events and then educational webinars. And then we are going to be hosting our monthly networking events across the state. They are always held the last Thursday of every month. Our next one is August 30th. We kicked off Detroit and Ann Arbor chapters last month. And this month we are kicking off our events in Lansing and Grand Rapids. Those events are held from 6 to 9 o'clock on the last Thursday of every month. So Karina, again, thank you so much for your time today. And we have another webinar with you coming up here in the next few weeks. And until then, have a wonderful rest of your week.
All right, you too. Thanks, Jamie.
Okay. Bye, guys.